Hi, Monica, and I'm gonna tell a story. So for these videos, I go off your suggestions from the internet, from the almighty internet, and I got a lot of heckler suggestions from the last one. A lot of people wanted to hear about hecklers. What's your worst heckler, weirdest heckler experience, all of those types of questions. So this story is gonna be about my weirdest heckler experience. First, we'll do a little background of what a heckler is. And there's so many different types of heckling. I think people, when they think of heckling, it's like, boo, you suck, that kind of thing. And there are so many different types of heckling. Basically, it's anybody who's talking to you while you're on stage that wasn't invited. Crowd work is different. That means I said like, well, what do you do for a living? That's crowd work. Heckling is when they come at you, you know? Lots of different types of hecklers. Negative hecklers, boo, you suck. You should kill yourself. Quit doing, I'm better than you. It's negative. It's kind of like what I call positive hecklers. They're like, yeah, you're right, that's funny. Oh my God, that's so true. Oh, you're cute. It's positive. Real dumb hecklers, like maybe they're too drunk to understand and they're just like, oh, I just got it. It's hard not to pay attention to those people too. And then there's perverted hecklers, which happens to both any type of comic, when they're like, take your shirt off, or like if somebody says they're single and then everybody's like, woo, still heckling. So basically you can try and let it go and hopefully it only happens once, or if it keeps happening over and over again, then you have to engage basically, because what we want out of it is for them to shut the fuck up. Right? So this particular instance that the story is about is not a boo you suck type of heckling. It's not even really a positive heckling, but it is by far the weirdest situation I've had because I accidentally guess this town's tragedy. So, doing a little theater in a small town, and it's probably fits 50 people, but there's maybe 20 there, because that's how it is most of the time. I must preface the fact that like this town is weird. There's like a big spiritual community, but it's kind of a rural area. And they have this thing that some people would call a cult, but I also call it a cult. There's a big cult there. So it's an interesting community. So when it's a smaller audience like that, you have the opportunity to kind of see how people are reacting, and you can hear any little thing. Like if people are talking in a big full room, you don't normally notice it. But in a smaller situation like this, I can hear all of you. So I'm kind of joking about the town and the school there, and I hear a lady in the back kind of go, oh, she's not from here. Like, you're not from around here, are you? That kind of thing. And I hear her say this, and I was like, I'm not, thank you so much for noticing. But then I say, I don't really understand small towns. I don't get it, right? Like, I don't understand small town. And you're right, like, I'm not from here. I'm not from a small, tiny place, you know. Seattle's not the biggest city in the world, but it's definitely not small rural town. So then I'm asking them like, well, what do you do in a small town? I don't know. Like, where do you go after this? Is this the one thing that you have to do? Like, what's still open? And then I say, you know, where do you go? Dairy Queen? It's like 9:30 and the same woman goes, Dairy Queen's already closed. And then I go full tangent where I go, you know what? That's why there's all these stories about people in small towns lighting themselves on fire with fireworks or whatever, because there's nothing else to do. And that was my mistake. Or genius, I'm not sure still. Because after I say that, why do people light themselves on fire or whatever? That same woman puts her head down and she goes, oh yeah, he did light himself on fire in front of the Dairy Queen. What? What are you talking about? And then they tell me this story that this young kid, like 16, 17, he bought gasoline and like poured it all over himself, lights himself on fire right in front of the Dairy Queen, and there's like a cross there and everything. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, how did I, first of all, I didn't know that, and they don't believe that part. Like, I'm like, I had no idea that happened. I just happened to pick the one restaurant that I saw driving in, Dairy Queen, and then fireworks. Like, that was my thought process. And they didn't believe, they were like, there's no way you didn't know that that happened. And I was like, no, why would I bring that up? Okay, sure, let's all destroy hecklers or whatever. Everyone be quiet and just sit and listen to my material. But there is no way that I would be malicious enough to be like, hey, you know what? You remember that kid you were friends with? Remember when he died? Yeah, so shut the fuck up. I would never say that. I would never do that. That's so crazy. That's like getting in a fight with your best friend and then all of a sudden being like, well, that's why your mom has breast cancer. Like, that's dirty. That's dirty pool. I just couldn't stop going back. I was like, this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened. Like, you shouldn't stop talking to me. Anyways, this is why you don't heckle comedians, because we're gonna accidentally, if not on purpose, bring up some terrible shit. Like, fuck. Like, at some point I do just look at them, because there was a kid in the audience that was like his best friend or something. It was this whole thing. And I look at them and I go, I am so sorry. I had no idea. And they were like, they were so confused by why that would even, and I'm still confused by why it even happened that way. I feel, this video is just so I can say I'm sorry, Yelm. I didn't mean to bring up your town tragedy on accident. After the show, everybody was very nice. They had a good time. I apologized again. And then as I'm driving out of this town, I passed the Dairy Queen, and that's when I noticed the cross that is right in front of it, because it definitely happened. I'm so sorry. And I've had plenty of other weird heckle situations where I've done something wrong. Like, this is more a story where I am not the hero. And it's like, one time there was a couple in the front row and they were talking and I was like, oh, that's nice. You guys are out on it's a mother-son night. You get to hang out with your mom. And they're like, we're married. And I was like, God damn it. Like, I didn't do that on purpose either. I think it sounds like I'm trying to be mean. And we have this reputation for wanting to be mean. Like, we're supposed to be like roasting everyone. And that's not really true. Like, we just want to do stand-up. I enjoy talking to the audience, but in like a fun, let's chat, get to know each other type of way, not like, let me, bring up horrifying things about your past. And I think about just the tone of her voice, maybe once a week, where she was just like, oh yeah, he did light himself on fire in front of the Dairy Queen. What? They didn't seem that mad, but I've never been invited back, so. All right, well, and so now I have some questions. You should follow me on Instagram and Facebook, or comment here, like, what else you want to hear stories about. I got lots of stories. But then I also ask people if they have any questions, like about hecklers or anything. So here's the little Q&A part. Do you prefer turning them into jokes or just pretending that they're not there? Obviously about the hecklers. You definitely prefer to make it funny. Absolutely. Like I said before, if it's a one-time thing, then you just kind of let it go so that you can keep doing your show. I mean, for the most part, we want to do our act, and I've, written this material and I want you to hear it. But then if it's again and again, you have to address it, because if you don't address it, now the rest of the audience isn't paying attention. They're focused on this dickhead, yelling random shit. That's like, yeah. So you have to address it, and usually it is funny. I mean, we're professionals for a reason. There's videos all over this platform of it for that reason. I would just prefer that you didn't say anything, probably. I do ask questions sometimes. I do crowd work sometimes. But it's usually when they say something to me first, and then we can, because again, it's not always like malicious. In fact, it rarely is it. They're just trying to be involved, or they're drunk or whatever, and so they're just almost answering. They think you're having a conversation, just the two of you. I feel like that's what hecklers are really dealing with internally. Number 2, all right. Have I ever encountered a heckler that just wouldn't fuck off? And how did I handle it? Well, same thing. Like, if they're continuing to go, then you continue to go. And if it's working, if it's fun, then just kind of deal with it. Until, like, I've had a lot of people, like, they're like, oh, this is fun, she's talking to me, and then they start getting, I mean, it would be the equivalent of me intentionally bringing up the Dairy Queen tragedy, they're like, oh, well, you're single, then it starts to get mean all of a sudden, and so that's when you're like, okay, either I have to be really mean back to this person, or something has to happen. Now, before you get to that point, most of the time, most places you work should have security, and that's part of their job. It's most of their job. Make sure people are, not on their phones, not recording, not talking, not heckling. So the security guards will usually deal with that most of the time faster than we would kick them out ourselves, I think. A lot of times, I've seen people go, no, let them stay, because they're like doing this crowd work. So I've encountered that quite a few times. Usually before I get too frustrated, they get kicked out, but that for sure depends on where you are. And which I think this next question will answer more of that. But otherwise, like at some point, if this heckler is just like relentless, your show becomes that. You kind of abandon your material and go, okay, I'm going to deal with this. And then whatever else comes up through that, you kind of work it all in. I mean, it really is it's not improv-y at that point, but you're just kind of riffing on your own material and on what they're saying and kind of mixing it together, which is completely different than your act, which is why I tell people to go to live stand-up no matter what. Like whoever special you've seen or whatever, go see that person live, because it's just going to be a different show no matter what. 3, what city has the worst hecklers? This is a hard question. I will say that for me, smaller towns they're more apt to say something. It's not, always bad or rough. Like I think you want the answer to be like, oh, it's Chicago or New York or whatever. But I don't feel like that. I feel like bigger cities have so many more people that they're just like, they know how to be around other people. But in small towns, they're like, we don't even know what this is. What do I do? And then they're just gonna yell at you, or I don't know, whatever they're up to. So I will say that I get heckled the most, and then have to just kind of sit there and take it, just deal with it for as long as I can. Like I just described, like your show becomes about that at casinos. Because like I'm not talking like a ballroom show casino, I'm talking like a Wednesday, you can hear the fucking slot machine still style casino, because those people are not there on purpose. Like people who go to a comedy show on purpose, I think are excited to see comedy and see stand-up and see like what your act is. But people who are just stumbling into a bar or a casino or whatever, they are not invested. And so they're usually older, they're usually bored with their own lives probably, I don't know. So they're drunk, so then they're like just whatever. And so in that situation also, there's no fucking security. There's like one sound guy who just is not paying attention. He's playing his guitar in the sound booth or whatever. And so it's just you and whoever stumbles in there. And so I've definitely had the most like, I have to talk to you or else you're never gonna shut up type of situations. The worst hecklers that are annoying in casinos, for sure, because they don't care. And also half the time they're not from there. Like I don't think you're as invested in something if you're just like if you're on a cruise ship or something and you're like, oh yeah, we'll go watch the dancers or whatever. Like halfway through you're like, yeah, I'm gonna leave. I don't think you would do that if you paid for a ticket to go and see a performance. You're not just like, oh, I'll go see what's up at the buffet. Like that's what happens in casinos and stuff like that. So I don't even think it matters what area of the country or the world I am in. It's more the venue and the farther out from a city actually you get. I think that's where the worst hecklers are. Oh man, I'm enjoying these. Hopefully that was a good fun story for you. You learned something about hecklers. This is educational really. I enjoy doing these because I don't really get to tell these stories on stage and stuff. So if you have suggestions or question, anything, any story you want to hear about, it could be about the road, my life, I don't know, dating, whatever, college, Seattle, LA, wherever, it doesn't matter. Any type of story you want to hear, comment or follow me on all the stuff, and you can message me, or I put up polls and stuff so you can pick what you want to hear about, and subscribe to this channel because I'll do more of these videos, but then I have stand-up videos, meditations once a month, all that stuff. Subscribe, comment, like.